While farmers work hard to grow the best crop, their Iowa Corn Checkoff investments are working to foster industry connections to help companies replace petroleum with corn. Additional research is finding even more uses for corn and discovering new ways and practices to help farmers get the most out of their crop. The Iowa Corn Checkoff, working hard for Iowa's corn farmers. Go to iowacorn.org to learn more.
All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Behind the Human. I'm your host, Mark Champagne, and it's my job to unpack the stories and mental fitness practices of people living at the top of their game, personally and professionally. Today, it's a real privilege. We've got a two-time guest on the show coming back for a second appearance, Jarvis, who is an acclaimed photographer, director, and entrepreneur known for his innovative work with major brands, and as the founder of CreativeLive, an online education platform that he ended up selling to Fiverr in 2021. Drawing from extensive experience in fostering creativity and entrepreneurship, Chase has now distilled his insights into his latest book, Never Play It Safe, which provides a practical guide to overcome fear and embrace your authentic self. And we really need that. Revealing how to tap into your innate creativity and build a life of purpose and passion. Welcome back, brother.
I'm the human on the show today. Thanks for having me, Mark. I appreciate it.
I mean, you've obviously had a show for a long time. It's always special when you can say welcome back.
It is. It's true. I feel like a veteran. Love your community, the community you built around your work and show. And it's Main Street for me. Like, these are my people, so I feel right at home and just grateful to be back. Thanks for having me.
Got it. All right, just so I can blow away your bio and all the work for 1 second, everyone gets the same question. You would have answered this 5 years ago, and I've got what you answered 5 years ago. So let's see the evolution. But the question is just this: who are you? You know, when I strip away all of this, like, who's Chase today? What are those characteristics that you feel define you right now?
Gosh, so the last time I was on the show, it was 5 years earlier, and it's been a really interesting 5 years. I feel like, pandemic notwithstanding, I was in the thick of a startup that I had created, 10 years previously at the time, and have gone through the process of having that acquired by a big public company. I was an executive at that company for a year, which is very not my cup of tea as a lifelong independent artist and creator. It was fascinating to have, scale. We served tens of millions of people at CreativeLive, made hundreds of millions in revenue. And that had a really profound impact on me on a couple of different vectors. So I'd say, who am I? At my core, I'm still this curious, quirky, fun, I'd even say goofy kid that was in Miss Kelly's class in second grade when Miss Kelly told me that I wasn't creative and that I should just stick to what my parents thought I should do, that I should, focus on sports, and that was going to be my only vehicle in life. I'm still that kid, but I've learned a lot of lessons. I've learned that the world will have you believe one thing about yourself or a set of things about yourself. And the true, heartfelt, earnest punchline is that none of that is accurate. In fact, you get to decide who you are, where you show up, how you show up, what you get to do with this one precious life. And as now sort of on the other side of some of those experiences that I shared, I still identify as a creator, as an entrepreneur, but my goal has really shifted to help other people. Instead of building, big companies that try and serve folks in line for a profit, my interest now is in helping people understand one really key thing, which is, if, let's just say, all of the best stuff in life, and I do not have anyone who's ever been able to tell me different, all of the best stuff, literally all, is on the other side of our comfort zone, on the other side of our fear, on the other side of risk. Yeah. And yet we are given very few instructions, very few tools, not a lot of guidance on how to do that. Yeah. So I've dedicated my life in this most recent book, I have a copy of it right here, called Never Play It Safe, which I know we'll talk about, but that this is the book that I wish I had.
Yeah.
This is the book that helped me writing this book. And I guess the mission that I'm faced with right now for the next chapter of my life is giving people the tools and the wisdom and the understanding that, look, nothing great comes on this, on the comfort side, on this side of risk. So why haven't we been given a framework for how to think about getting to the other side where all the best stuff
Yeah.
is? And it's been a very fun realizing this. This isn't, when you have your company acquired, it feels like the end for, a lot of people. The story of, the arc of that part of your life, that's the ending of it when you have your company acquired. And for me, this feels like a radical, new, clear beginning.
Mm. I'm thinking, because like I said, I have what you shared the first time around, and the way you positioned it was, you've gone through two arcs. One was this arc of acquiring tools and skills, of course, which I think we can probably relate that back definitely when you're pretty hardcore into photography and all of that kind of work
Yep.
and so forth, and then building businesses. And then at the time that we spoke, you had mentioned your focus was on doing your best to give back to others.
Yeah,
And I feel like this third book or chapter or whatever you want to
yeah,
call it just going deeper and honing in on that giving back in a
it
way.
is. It's a
Yeah.
clarity, Mark, that I didn't have. I knew that that's what it was going to be about, my last chapter, and yet it was a very sort of very generic about. I do believe that that is how the human lives are structured. We have to acquire enough to realize that acquiring more at some point isn't helpful. So that shifts our mentality. But it just wasn't clear to me against all the ways I could give. It was sure it was building tools for other people. It was building, if you think of tools as like iPhone apps or things that I built, which were, very interesting and fun and provided entertainment and connection and creativity for millions of people. And then a learning platform, which did that, basically on steroid for tens of millions of people. What I still realize is that none of that matters if you don't actually know who you are,
Yeah.
because it takes you being able to answer the question, who am I and what do I really want, to even end up in any of those tools that I was building to help you. So it occurred to me that there's one level sort of further zoomed out, which is who am I and how do I get the things that I really want out of life? How do I identify them? And then how do I connect with those things? So that's what this book is about. And to be clear, that is earned wisdom. That is what these dark circles under my
Yeah.
eyes are from, and why I know it's a valuable topic to help people work with.
Well, I want to pull a little bit more on that thread, and
Sure, go
I
ahead.
really enjoyed, actually, there was the dedication in the book, and then I actually went straight to your acknowledgments and read all of that as well, and then actually consumed the entire book. And like, Kate comes up, your wife, often, obviously.
Mhm.
And
Yes,
I feel like this dedication that you provided to her is just a really nice jumping off point around, coming back to yourself. You said, for Kate, for your
yeah,
love and all your help in finding my way back to myself over and over again. Can can you elaborate on any moments,
of
and
course.
maybe the
Yeah,
the the most recent moment where you may have felt, maybe you didn't feel it and Kate just saw it, where you've drifted away in some capacity, and you had to come back to get clear on that who am
yeah,
I?
yeah. So one of the things that I find in, what I've just been sharing to date, and specifically in the process of this book, for example, is that, we are just trying to navigate this big, our lived experience, our life, right? And what um, I feel like there is a belief, or there is a narrative that there's never a gap between who you are and the things that where you find yourself right now. There's always like, that's who you are. You're really this person. And what I have come to believe, and what that dedication to my wife in this case references, is, oh, it's not that way at all. Actually, we are ourselves, and part of
Boom. I didn't know that I did that live. Sorry. I was just going to take a
that's
shot.
okay.
Just for everyone listening, we took a little what they call a squad shot.
And I'm very confused in that squad shot looking at like, what's happening here? I do not understand why there's a big countdown on my screen. No, with that, to me, what I have learned is no, actually the world is doing its part to get you to conform. It's giving you a very narrow set of options. And as a social animal, and the human species, we are driven largely by our neurology and by a psychological principle called mimesis, which the French philosopher René Girard talks a lot about, which is we tend to only be the things that we can see in our field of view. And the reality is that's a very, very narrow set of what human beings are capable of the life that is possible for us. And yet the world programs us, our parents, our career counselors, they all try and get us to do a half a dozen things. You should be a lawyer, a doctor, or any one of these 10 professions. You should go to school like this. You should walk like this and talk like this. And what, as I articulated earlier, the funny thing that I've realized is all of the best stuff in life is on the other side of that. It's not necessarily those things. Even if you fall into one of those professions or you seek them out, the world is constantly doing its part to push you in a particular direction. And we're not given the tools to follow our own path, so to speak. And so what happens is we do get separated for ourselves. The concept is pretty simple. If you're a degree off on your compass and you walk for 10 years, you're 10,000 miles from home or 10,000 miles from where we thought you were going. And so it is a constant battle. The work that we do is just bringing ourselves back to who we authentically are over and over again after getting lost. And so I referenced that, I jested about Ms. Kelly getting me off track in second grade. Well, when she said, "You're not very creative," I, stopped making films. I ditched my magic show. I had a stand-up comedy routine. Like, I quit all those things and I just became a jock. And I went to college on a soccer scholarship. I was the captain of the football team. I dated a cheerleader. I basically did what the world was programming me to do.
Did you go to med school or something
And
too?
yeah, I bailed on medical school though, but that was where I was destined for because, that's the programming. So, and at some point, and that point happened to be when my grandfather died of a heart attack on the cold garage floor, and I was given his camera, that I was literally like, wait a minute, this thing here, this is actually a passport. This is a key back to who I really was, that person I've been sort of ignoring for a long time. Well, you would think that if I was even aware of that I would just latch onto myself, have a one-to-one authentic relationship with myself and be off to the races. But it turns out that no, just like, your audience is familiar with meditation. People think meditation is remaining in this perfect state of X. And it's not. Meditation, the actual process, the act of meditating, is the bringing back of the awareness to the breath or to the mantra or whatever.
It's practice. Yeah.
It's that is the process. The process isn't staying in perfection. The process is wandering, realizing that you have wandered, because that's what it means to be a human being, and bringing yourself back over and over again. And the goal, therefore, if you zoom out far enough, is not to never lose yourself, or by analogy, not to never make mistakes. The goal is actually to make a lot of mistakes, but to recover very quickly and return to who you are over and over again, 1% better, smarter, kinder, and more connected. And so that was in essence, the dedication was, I found the person, my soulmate in life, who's helped me so much, just come back to that person that I am and love that person. It has a very strange, valuable effect of when you're in alignment. We've all been in alignment. We know what it feels like to not be in our own heads, to be doing the things we love with the people that we're connected to, we're close to. That's available to all of us all of the time. And that's what sort of being in alignment feels like. The cool thing too is that it is when we're in that state that our ability to access, to transcend fear, to go beyond what the world will see as risky, to to explore what's possible, that's so much more available to us. So
Yeah.
that's this sort of relationship between finding our way back to ourselves, and in doing so, we become the best versions of ourselves, which makes life more possible. The alternative, and this is the way I frame the book, is playing it safe. It's staying small, reminding yourself, who am I to want more than I have right now? And, based on my own experience and having 1,000, guests like yourself on my podcast, I know that all of the best stuff is on the other side of our comfort zone. And I wanted to provide you with the framework for doing so.
How do you think Kate would describe the misaligned version of Chase?
um, the part of me that gets seduced by everything that the world shows us as a curious,
Yeah.
as a curious person who has a lot of energy. I think she would say that Chase believes it's true. You can win not just at anything, but at everything.
Yeah.
And as a Energizer Bunny type character, I think, to me, the thing that is our strength is also our weakness, right? The fact that I have a well of seemingly endless energy and curiosity, that can be a dangerous combination, and it can get me off track. There's actually a bit in the book, about halfway through in the chapter around constraints, which essentially I was living in a world that had no constraints on it. I didn't know who I was or what I wanted to be. And by all measures, except the one that really matters most, I was on fire. The way the story goes in the book, I just stepped out of the shower. I was at the brand new at the time Cosmopolitan Hotel, staying in the baller suite or something, and I had just come off stage with Lady Gaga, having announced that I was going to relaunch with her. We were going to represent the brand Polaroid,
Okay.
and revitalize this endeared, amazing brand. People were trying to buy my company, CreativeLive, for, never work again, private jet level money. I was, traveling all over the world for the world's biggest brands, shooting their campaigns. I had, essentially endless money, nothing but, like lots of joy, laughter, private jets, all of the things that looked good on paper. And I had gotten out of the shower, and my wife knew. She's like, essentially she's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "What do you mean? What are we doing? We're doing it all. This is everything. We're doing it. We're doing it all, literally." And to your question, we're doing it all. It's not just like we're doing the things that we want. Well, we're literally doing it all. And it was killing her. And it was pulling me really far away from my stated destination, which was just to have impact, help people find that creative part of themselves and do the things that they were put on this planet to do. And I was just so easily seduced by all of the shiny objects in the world. And, it takes a person who's very clear minded and also very close to you to help you see that in a heartfelt way, versus like, what are you trying to keep me down?
Yeah.
And my wife, she's so insightful and disarming. She calls herself Buddhish. She's just very, very zen person. And it was in that moment that I realized, oh man, that is my Achilles heel, one of several. But again, this is the nature of the book, is not to make you feel bad, because wherever you are right now, if you're listening to this show, you are probably aware of your level of alignment. Like, how far off track are you, or are you dead set, like running right at the thing you're supposed to be running at? So you're aware that there's this little gap. And my life, the book, the lessons in the book, the stories in the book are not at all about punishing you for that. They're about helping you realize that this is actually part of the process. And what if we could course correct in a thoughtful, very, very simple, gentle way? Boy, wouldn't that feel good?
I think, like, I like what you said about, it's, obviously the book and your work, it's not about trying to make you feel bad. And then I resonate with that, because I feel like any of us involved in reflective practices, or let's just call it trying to gather internal data and insight, if we can look at all of that stuff from a place of non-judgment, just like you would for a company or a brand, and be like, this is just data and information that we can now take some steps forward to act on
Yep.
and make some little
Yeah.
micro edits, right? But I feel like the vast majority or a good amount of the population, and I fall in and out of this as well, of course, but thankfully surrounded with these practices day in, day out. But we're on autopilot. So it's hard
Yep.
to like pull out of the rat race and be like, oh shit, like how did I get here, for example, right? But it's
Yeah.
just taken, I mean, and coming back to Kate, and whether, those are spouses or people close to you that know you really well, it's so like they see and they feel it. Like I'll come
Yeah.
upstairs sometimes and just make a coffee, and my wife would be like, "What's up?" Like I haven't even said anything, right? And it's like, "Oh, she
Yeah.
got me again," like something's looping in
Just
my
how you're
mind.
how you're moving in the
Yeah.
world. The people that know you can tell.
So just to kind of anchor that, or what we're talking about too, because I know the book kind of came out of that chapter of your life
Yeah.
where you sold Creative Live, and I'm assuming, kind of navigating the next phase in your life. Like what, first of all, how did that feel? Because I feel, this, like there's that's like
Sure.
the ultimate goal for so many entrepreneurs.
Right.
And I know we
Right.
hear the opposite stories of, it's not always what it's cracked up to be and so forth. But I want to know, like, how did you feel?
Sure. Happy to tell you. So, um, well, I in a letter to the company the day that we announced the acquisition. Of course, it's a very strange process because you're at the time, navigating inbound interest to buy your company. And again, I'd been building this online learning platform, CreativeLive, for creators. I'd been around since 2010, and this was 2021, and it was middle of the pandemic, and people had realized that online learning was
Yeah,
real.
yeah,
And by the way, it was a key vector in the future of education. So, in that sense, the timing was good. And sure, our what you would call our stock. I mean, theoretically, it's stock. We weren't traded publicly at that time, but our conceptual stock had been higher before because we might have been growing faster or all sorts of different things, how that is measured. And yet I was very aware that it's time. This is the right time to um, have the company be acquired by, of the companies that were interested in us, by this particular company. We ended up selling to Fiverr, which was an online creative marketplace. And the thinking was very, very simple. It's, if they're a creative marketplace that provided services, from everything from web design to graphic design, SEO, all that stuff. If you want a creative freelancer, you'd go here and hire someone from this platform. Large, again, publicly traded company in the New York Stock Exchange. The idea is pretty simple. The more skills that that Fiverr could teach their audience, then they would be able to perform more services for the world. And it makes sense to us because we don't have, ours was an education platform. It'd be sort of like if the University of Stanford could connect you directly with the
yeah,
job. That's the
yeah,
mentality that we had. If we're a learning platform, and what if Stanford could just plug you in? These are any of the 50 jobs that you could have immediately as soon as you finish your degree or finish this particular course of study. So it's not a stretch to see why it was a good fit. And in the letter that I wrote to the company on the day that it was acquired, I said, a lot of people talk about this as bittersweet. And I just have to say it's just sweet for me.
mm,
And it's just sweet because I know this is the right time. I know this is the right move. The reason I know this is because I've been through so many matriculations. Again, people were trying to buy us when we were 12 months old
yeah,
for never work again, private jet money. And I was like, well, if we're doing this and it's 12 months in, like, let's ride this thing for a little bit, see if we can create more of an impact than it's just people are really buying the foundation of an idea. Let's go realize this idea. And I meant that at the time. I meant that, there's no bitterness here. It's run its course, and I'm happy to see it into this next chapter. And then, of course, the story that I tell in the book, which is also very real. Kate confronted me on that at some point, and friend of mine who may be familiar with your audience. His name is Seth Godin. Seth called or texted and said, "Hey, I saw you sold the company. We should talk." And I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Well, you don't say if the legend Seth Godin says we should talk, you don't say no." So I was like, "Yeah, okay, cool, tomorrow." And he really helped me understand that now this is going to be hard. It's going to be interesting downstream from here. There's like identity crisis, and there's, was it too soon, too late? Some investors got hosed, other investors did well. How about the team? One of the reasons we ended up going with this particular acquirer is because it was actually way better for the team than it was for me personally. And so you think you're doing all the right things, and that doesn't mean that that there aren't, frustrations or areas of sadness or misgiving. So sure enough, you start looking at that really carefully. And I did ask a bunch of questions, and Seth was spot on. It's like, just in this post-acquisition universe, just be thoughtful, be quiet, be calm, take your time. Life is long. Do not feel like you have to rush right into it. And I will confess, the company was acquired on October 1, actually. So we're recording this here at the very last couple of days of September. And I had confirmed that I would do a year with the acquiring company. And so let's fast forward to that year, that my year is up. I leave the company, and lo and behold, it's like, okay, cool. I like this stuff. Now, I'm not really, retired is in air quotes because I'm still young enough and I got enough, I'm full of, pea and vinegar, and I want to go do more stuff, but I'm going to rest. And then I'll go back and start, doing my creative entrepreneurial stuff again in January. I'm going to take the holidays with the family, new year, new me. Well, January came and went. July came and went. The following December came and went, and I had no gas in the tank.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then I did start to, reflect on all that stuff that Seth has shared. And what became clear to me is that I had once again betrayed myself. And I couldn't quite pin down exactly how or why, but I know that I had let myself down. And in the same way that I allowed the world to talk me in second grade out of doing the things that I wanted to do. And again, when I was, bound for medical school, and I managed to figure out, no, that's not what I want to do. I actually really want to be a photographer. And then again, when I became a venture-backed CEO, that's not who I am. I knew that's not who I was, but I saw that through and sold the company. And then again, after you sold the company, you're like, man. So what it looked at, when I looked closely, rather, I'd just seen a bunch of sometimes big, sometimes small, other times massive betrayals of who I really was at my core. And the quiet after a year of that was like, wait a minute, this is actually it working. The system is making you increasingly aware of who you are and when you step off the path. And the goal is just to return there over and over again, in the same way that the goal of meditating is return to the breath or to the mantra, and to do so with kindness and with vigor and energy. Like, this is actually it working.
Yeah.
And so this, the summary of this is a message to anyone who's listening right now. If you are, living life that's even 1% out of alignment, it, 1% off track. And whether you know it now intellectually, or whether you will find out at some point at a very heartfelt level, the goal is, hey, it's okay. And let's take some steps. Let me give you a framework for how to think about that. Get back to yourself, because it's in that getting back to yourself, that's when you feel most alive. That's when you do your best work. That's when you show up the best in the world, in your world, the best version of you.
Well, and it's where you hear the whispers, right?
For sure. You're able to listen. It's just the noise, the signal to noise ratio gets really, easy to navigate, rather than I'm guessing what it is right now for so many people who are listening or watching is difficult.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Difficult. I work with a lot of corporate teams in bringing mental fitness in, and I always get them to check in with, just if you had to take one word to describe your mind over the last 3-4 days, what would that word be? And almost 100% of people are checking in with stressed, overwhelmed, tired, nervous, anxious,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
it's I get it. There's so much going on. There's so much going on within our internal world as well and so forth. But and this is part of the reason for this show and the work and everything else, is that it doesn't have to be like this. There are
Yeah.
tools, right? And there's so many tools.
Honestly, so many tools. And to me, that's why I knew I had to write this book. And I will share, you said you read the
Yeah.
acknowledgments. So in the acknowledgments, I acknowledge
Yeah.
that I was 18 months into writing this book, in that window just post, CreativeLive being acquired. And 5 months of really aggressive research, and aligning with my publisher. I had a great book deal. I have an amazing agent. Same agent as folks like Ryan Holiday and Tim Ferriss. Steve is just a total legend. And did a lot of research, and then writing in earnest for like 13 months with the team, some writing help, some research help, project management, like all in on this book. And I'm 8 weeks from the deadline, and I realize something is very wrong, and that I've been writing the wrong book.
How did you realize
And
that? Like, what were the signs?
the signs is the book that it looked very good on paper, and it would have been very tidy. It was a tidy,
Yeah.
The intersection of business and creativity, where I feel like uniquely positioned to talk and deliver value, and yet it lacked grit.
Hmm.
It lacked um, it lacked the hard stuff. It was full of what Brene Brown calls gold-plated grit, which is
Yes.
essentially fake grit. You tell a story about how difficult it was, and then you always come out the other side looking like a prince.
Yeah.
Like it's this a storytelling technique that is really designed to help you escape from any negative experiences, or issue accountability or whatever. And I realized this, that I was 1 degree off, and I had walked for 13 months, and now I was 1,000 miles from home. And with 8 weeks to go, I threw it all in the trash. I'm grateful for my agent, Steve, helping me navigate that. And for my publisher, Harper. They were, they were very pleased with the book that I'd
Sure.
showed them. And they're like, what? This is,
This guy's
great.
going
Well,
rogue.
maybe we can keep this one.
Steve.
Right. Maybe they can keep this one as the next one. I'm like, no, that one's in the trash. It's on fire
Yeah.
now. And yet, like, the world rewards us when we lean into the best things in life and what we know to be true in our heart. And so this book just absolutely poured out of me. And the reason I'm telling this story right now is because you said there are tools out there. And when I realized that all of the best stuff, that what I had wanted personally was some sort of a framework for, okay, great. If all of the best stuff, as you say, is on the other side of our comfort zone, on the other side of our fear, on the other side of risk, why are we not taught that, first of all? And second of all, what are the tools that can help us do that? And it turns out one of my favorite parts about where this book landed is in doing all this internal work for, decades, and having more than 1,000, of the world's top performers on my podcast, and running around with them as a photographer and a filmmaker. That was one of my favorite things. I was 10 feet from the best in the world on 100 different vectors. Tony Hawk's been a guest on your show. I've photographed Tony, Serena Williams, Roger Federer. I mean, Travis, the best in the world in basically any sort of action sport world. And there's a pattern. And what I realize is that there's just, a half a dozen. I ended up with 7 tools that are natively part of who we are, that the world does a very good job of turning them off.
Yeah.
And so it's our job
Levers.
to listen, to look inward and realize that, oh man, the distance from where I am now and where I want to be, it might be a ways away, but it's only one decision. And the decision way to, sort of re-engage with this natural state that I have, is things that matter. And distractions, if you're really focused on something that matters to you, distractions fade away. What about trusting your intuition? What about being able to do this in a joyful, playful state? Like that's our natural state. And so the book became very clear to me. It poured out of me, and I'm very, very happy with where it landed.
I find, yeah, I mean, I went through something like this with Personal Socrates, where I had to change things up kind of the last minute, and I, I'm sure I feel it in your book, and I'm sure you feel it as well. And I went through this, and anyone that's written books, or I would probably even expand that to worked on really passionate projects, it's like you kind
Yeah.
of write the book that you need to read, right?
For sure. For sure. Yeah. And what's cool about that is, like, I think it's James Joyce, right? In the particular lies the universal. Like, you write
Yeah,
something. And I will say that I had for individual chapters, or like I had a couple of things like were taped to my sort of
yeah,
monitor. For some chapters, there was a picture of my wife or a picture of a friend of mine that I was like, I'm writing this for you, the
yeah.
human, because I know that if I'm serving you, there are 10 million yous out there in the world. The other thing that I had taped to the corner of my monitor was the phrase, "Don't play it safe,"
Hmm.
because I'd realized that it was in playing safe that I had created that previous manuscript.
Was the book called
And
that at this
so
point?
it was not.
Interesting. Yeah,
Exactly. And so this is through that process, this sort of re-architecting the book in service of individual people who I knew who were struggling with some of these things. And this commitment to myself, hey, if all the best stuff in life is on the other side of playing it safe, I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to tell the hard stories. I'm going to tell the real
yeah,
truths, even if they make me look, not all
yeah,
shiny. And if they, tell all essentially about some really hard things in the world or my own personal experiences, that's where, that's what's going to resonate. So it was only after completing it and saying, like, what's the most important thing that I feel like I've said? It's like, oh shit. It's about not playing it safe. And to be
yeah,
clear, I am very clear up front in this book. This is not about seatbelts or sunscreen or emotional or physical safety. All those things are very important, but it's pretty much everything else. The things that give us the illusion that there is safety at all.
yeah.
That's what I want you to play, through, over, around, to get to what
Yeah.
matters most.
Well, I think this line was at the very beginning of the book, something to I'll paraphrase, but something to the effect of like nature doesn't play it safe, so why do we, right? And that one
Yeah.
hit me right away, and it was just you think of all of the we're on my side, we're in Canada over here. I mean, you see this on the West Coast as well, but I mean, all the fires in the Rockies and stuff like that, and it's obviously terrible in the moment and people's lives are affected and so forth. But if you're able to zoom out of that, it's kind of nature doing nature's thing for the most part. And
Yeah.
if you can kind of play at that level, I don't know, I just find it lightens life a little bit and be like, okay,
Yep.
you know what? There's stuff at play here and let's go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really interesting framework. For me, the that the world there's no overlord, there's no evil person trying to talk you out of your dreams.
Yeah.
But it just so happens, if you look at all the times where people are trying to talk you out of their dreams, the people who are the people who've given up on
Mm,
theirs. And whether knowingly or not, and this is what makes this difficult, is that these are people we appreciate. These are our parents, our spouse, our partners, our friends, and they want the very best for you. But that's why it's confusing. And yet the ability to stay connected to those people, to do the thing you were supposed to do, rather than the thing that the world will have you believe is, again, this safe path. That's goes back to that line that you shared. Hey, safety is an illusion. There's every bit as much danger in the thing that is what appears risky as the thing that is safe. Like, if you predict this safe path toward, for me, for example, I'll use me so that it lets anybody else off the hook and I don't have to point it. Like, I realized on my journey to medical school that I had zero desire. And if I was to pursue that, what sort of life would that provide me? How risky is that to
mhm.
do the thing that you're not supposed to be doing? Whether that turned into me not being a good doctor, which has a bad outcome, me getting sick and, because you're out of alignment with who you're supposed to be. Like, Sure, the risks might have been great in, boy, I'm going to bail on professional soccer and a career in medical school or a career as a doctor to become a photographer. So, it might be risky from a revenue perspective to become a photographer, but what are the risks of being out of alignment with who you really are?
That's a
To me,
good
that's a
question.
10x risk. But yeah, it's a 10x
Yeah.
risk. And the irony is then when you double down on who you're supposed to be, I made 1,000 times more than the multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars that I was in debt as from trying to become this, a
Yeah.
doctor. And so, the world has a way of serving us. The world starts happening for us rather than to us when we decide that we're unwilling to capitulate. We're unwilling to play it safe any longer.
Well, I mean, the thing that comes to mind for me, just having gone through the book and just for everyone listening to, it's out now, so make sure to grab a copy. Obviously, you've been talking about, how you restarted essentially and really shared, the vulnerable parts and so forth that really, form
Yeah.
who you are today. But there was a line or a couple sentences at the end of the book that like, I'm sure this book's gonna do really well. Obviously, you want it to reach a lot of people because you want people to, you wanna have that
Get the
impact, right? And you
message.
wanna have that
Yep.
message, and
Yep.
and I think we share the same vision around just giving people the tools and the right questions to think about. But I can't help but think for you personally, and I hope you feel some of this, like, I feel like you already won with this line. And let me read it. It said, "For the first time in a
Please.
very long time, I am content with the mystery and not planning my next move. There will be another moment right after this one. There will be more work, more highs and lows, and opportunities to grow. But right now, I feel fulfilled." I mean, isn't that what we're all looking for?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
that's
true.
powerful, Chase.
Thank you. And I'll tell you,
I have goosebumps just reading that. It's
let me be real vulnerable here. I almost didn't include that line because I felt like I would be judged
mm,
because in some way it feels like, wait a minute, so you're telling me you've arrived? And I rewrote that sentence or that phrase probably 50 times because I wanted to make sure that that both I knew for myself and that I could communicate to anyone who's watching or who's reading that this is a temporary
yeah,
state. And yet the goal is just to spend as much time as you can
yeah,
here. This is a fleeting moment, but the goal, this is the returning back to yourself over and over
yeah,
again part. You can't say you've arrived. Arriving is
yeah,
temporary. You can only, when you arrive, you leave again shortly. But the goal is to just remember that this is possible
yeah,
and to, that striving, what's this balance between ambition and contentment? And so thank you for sharing that line. It was a carefully chosen one. And I simultaneously believe it's true. It's available to us.
mhm,
The world will have us believe that this is an outside game, that our ambition is the thing that will help us achieve the thing that will then land the plane back home. And what because I know your work and your ethos, and what I keep having to learn
yeah, yeah,
over and over
same.
again is it's an inside
Yeah,
game. And to me that and the fact that it's an inside game is both, maddening and beautiful because if you're willing to go inside, ask yourself the question, what is it that I really want? And go in service of that, then it's all this stuff is available to you. I would say immediately. And where it's not available immediately is that these are habits that we have to build. And just like anything, the world has conditioned us to be one way. And so there's resistance to these habits and we have to, work. But you can taste these things immediately. You know what it means to listen to your intuition.
yeah,
You know what it means when you are in that joyful state where you are around people that you love, doing stuff that you love. You know that this is available to you. You can snap your fingers and go there immediately.
yeah,
If I just, success leaves clues. Think of the time where you felt the most fulfilled, connected, all of those great, attributes. What were you doing? Who were you with? And I'm telling you, if you go back and do those things, it's not to say we haven't changed, but there's a core piece of you that still gets lit up by that. And if that is the thing we're chasing, and you can get really clear on that, the gap again, between where you are and where you want to be. It could literally take zero time to taste that again, which to me is so powerful.
Yeah. Well, and it's where other ideas come from. It's where we feel the
For sure.
greatest. So I mean, I think if you would have included that line, actually, when I read it at first, I was like, why didn't he open with this? But now I actually see, I feel think you need the whole
Yeah.
book to kind of set it up to your point, so you're not like judged like, oh, this guy's enlightened or something like
What do you
that,
mean? This guy's
right?
got it all
Yeah,
figured
yeah,
out? Are you kidding me? I don't need to read the
exactly.
book. This guy's got it all figured out.
But I love the honesty of that, like, we're in and out of that state. And I think if we
Mm,
can just set the objective for all of us, like no matter where we're at, what's going on, to find that place more often than not and just kind of ride
yeah.
those waves. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like human beings, we deserve to wake up feeling good more days than not. So
That's
let's,
true. And it's sort of, again, perfection is is a nice to have, but it's not
yeah,
doable, right? And therefore asymptotically approaching it is the best we
yeah,
got. So we might as well snuggle up as close as we can. And in order to do that, what are the conditions that that we need to have that happen? And that's in part how I sort of distilled to these 7 tools, or these 7 principles, levers, if you will, to get you there, to keep you there as close to that spot as
yeah.
possible for as long as possible.
Well, my man, we are at time. I want to thank you, of course, for coming on the show again, but a higher thank you for you doing what you do day in and day out, and just literally decades at this point of in and out of playing it all in, playing it safe, acknowledging when you're there and shaking stuff up. Like, that stuff is just not easy. It's not easy.
Mm,
And for the most part, or at least what I can see, knowing you and having followed your work for a long time, it's kind of all for the benefit of helping people, which
mm.
we all feel in how you answered that "who are you" question. Like, that was a through line for the last 2 times you've answered it here. So thanks for that, Chase. That's
Well, congratulations again on Behind the Human, and all your professional success. It's been fun to sort of ride alongside you on this journey that we've both been on. I'm grateful for you and the community that you've built. I'm grateful to have you on have been on the show. And I've made a lot of things, whether those are television shows, online courses, built companies, like whatever. This feels different to me. It feels like it's a different chapter, and it's the beginning of something rather than the end of something else. And this realization that all the best stuff is on the other side of risk, and how do we constructively do that over and over again? I hope that this helps someone who's listening.
Here's to winning the seconds of the day and living in the present moment. Thanks to you.
Amen to that. Shout out to presence.
Present, yes.
You might think Iowa grows corn, but the truth is, corn grows Iowa. While farmers work hard to grow the best crop, their Iowa corn checkoff investments are hard at work too. Opening local and global markets for corn and corn-fed products, educating drivers on unleaded 88 as the best fuel at the pump, finding new uses for corn, and sharing the farmer's story. Iowa corn farmers are backed by researchers, educators, market experts, and more to keep corn growing Iowa.
Okay, it's official. We are very much in the final sprint to Election Day. And face it, between debates, polling releases, even court appearances, it can feel exhausting, even impossible to keep up with. I'm Brad Milkey. I'm the host of Start Here, the daily podcast from ABC News. And every morning, my team and I get you caught up on the day's news in a quick, straightforward way that's easy to understand, with just enough context so you can listen, get it, and go on with your day. So, kickstart your morning. Start smart with Start Here and ABC News, because staying informed shouldn't feel overwhelming.